Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Being Yourself show, which has gone for sleep for quite some time, even though we had a lot of small tips and tricks always coming on in form of shorts for your speaking journey. But we are starting it again, and there is nothing better than today's episode I could start it with because we are talking to somebody who is a corporate humorist, a humor doctor. You must watch his TED Talk. It's really cool. It's when he talks about his grandmother's stories. It's really nice. I would love to see his grandmother. But yeah, let's welcome Andrew on the show, who is a humorist, professional humorist, and we'll find out what exactly that is and how we can use his skill to make our communication, our conversations, our speeches, and our day to day talks more fun. Welcome, Andrew.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks. First of all, you left a corporate job, right? It's the deadliest sin. And I'll tell you why I say that. But you did that and you did that successfully, which is great. Congrats. What did inspire you? Were you really got bored of the people? How did they speak without laughing at all, or there was something else?
Yeah, it was something else. I mean, I think that no, I love. So I started my career at Procter and Gamble as an IT project manager, and I loved it. I mean, eventually, I found my way to love it. But the reason why I left is while there, I discovered the power of humor as a professional skill, as a way to get better results. And I only started using humor not because I thought I was funny, but because in university my best friend wanted to start an improv comedy group. He needed people and forced me to join. And I was terrible. I was not very good to start. But over time, with a bunch of practice and being in university and not knowing better, we just got, better and better and better. And by the time I left and started working at P&G, I wasn't necessarily hilarious, but I had started to bring in some what I use at some of what I was learning in improv and stand up, and realized I was getting better results. And along the way, I realized like no one ever told me to use humor. Like it was never part of my formal training at P&G. It was never in any of my business classes. I didn't learn it in engineering school. I only did it because of this friend of mine. But I realized just how valuable it was. And so I decided to start talking about it. And the reason why I left P&G ultimately was, I needed this nudge from my friend to start using humor. And I realized I wanted to be that nudge for other people. I got so many benefits from learning this skill and figuring out how to use it effectively, that I was like, I want to do that for other people. I want to be, as Gandhi almost said, be the comedian you wish to see in the world. And so I was like, okay, let me go out and try to do that. And I didn't know if it was going to be successful or not. I'm an engineer by background, so I gave myself a little bit of a runway. I gave myself a to-do list. I gave myself a year and was like, okay, if this doesn't work within a year, then I'll go back to corporate. And that was at this point 14 years ago. So still going strong so far in terms of teaching people this professional skill.
Love that joke. Be the comedian. Be the change you want to see in the world. That's exactly what he said, but that's how you introduce humor into a normal conversation. So we've seen one evidence. Tell me one thing, Andrew. You said that you were not funny and then you got that skill. Now, a lot of people think either somebody is funny or they're not funny. And when the people who are not funny and they try to crack jokes, it generally doesn't work. And then they're like, I'm never going to crack another joke again in my life. Did you ever have any such situation? Or if you did, what did you do?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely have had many moments, and I almost very early on almost quit kind of doing any type of comedy or humor at all because, well, first of all, the first improv show that we did. So the only reason why I joined the improv group was basically all of my friends in university were doing it, and so it was a way to hang out with my friends. And our very first show was terrible, right? Like it was to a bunch of other college students. We had no idea what we were really doing. And Like if it was just me by myself, that would have been enough to be like, I'm never doing this again. But because it was with a bunch of my friends, they got a few laughs, etc. There was enough there that we're like, okay, we're gonna keep trying this. We're gonna, watch whose line is it anyway and repeat what we saw, and we're gonna go back and get a little bit better. But then the fourth time that I did stand up, I I'd gotten into a comedy competition and they had these guest judges and it was in front of like 200 people. And I had prepared, I had worked like 3+ months on this set that I was working on. You had a 5-minute set. And I got about 3.5 minutes into that set and completely froze, like completely forgot what I was going to say. And I blanked on stage and I just stared at my feet and I apologized to the audience. I was like, wow. Sorry. What, like just staring at my feet the whole time. And it lasts for 30+ seconds. Like I have the video footage of it. Like if you had asked me, I would have thought that it was like 15 hours. Like I experienced like Einstein's theory of relativity, where it's like if you're bombing on stage, that's when you realize like time feels different. And it felt forever. 30 seconds. I eventually stumbled to an end. The judges, were very nice because, like, aside from you forgetting and making us sit through this awkwardness at all, there was a decent writing and all of that. And at that point, I wanted to quit. Like, I thought about, like, okay, clearly comedy is not for me. I'm never going to do this again. And then I remember seeing an interview with a comedian, and I don't remember which comedian, some famous comedian, someone that had gotten on stage a bunch of times. And he was like, bombing in comedy feels awful. But he's like, once you bomb, it can give you a little bit more confidence because you realize that that's the worst that can happen, right? Like you've already bombed, but for the most part, bombing, like it's at least in a comedy club, obviously corporate's a little bit different. Bombing in a comedy club, it's going to feel awful. No one's going to laugh. But that's like the worst that can happen. And so you can only go up from there. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that's true a little bit. Like it's never going to feel any worse. It might feel just as bad as that, but it's never going to feel any worse than that. But the other thing that it taught me was that I was trying to be too perfect to a script. I had tried to do rote memorization where it's like I memorized everything word for word. And so when I forgot one word, it meant that I forgot every word that followed it versus being more extemporaneous. Like traditional public speaking skills, be more extemporaneous and try and rote memorization. And so I realized, oh, part of it was a technique thing. It wasn't just me, it was a technique thing. So if I change the technique, maybe I get different results. And eventually what I learned through improv and more stand-up is that failure is just data, right? Like if you fail, if you try a joke and it doesn't work, then it's just data. And that data isn't to say that you yourself are not a funny person and you can never be funny. It's just to say the thing that you tried in that moment didn't work. And that kind of helped me to go on. And that's what we train people now. It's like, I believe at Humor That Works, what we tell people is we can teach anyone to be funnier. Like we may not make you Netflix comedy level funny. You may not be on, Kevin Hart's Funny AF or ever get into like the Just for Laughs festival or that kind of stuff. But we can take whatever your baseline is and get a little bit better because there's an art and science to humor. And if you study the science part and practice the art part, you will improve. And that's what we mean when we talk about this skill of humor.
And then you didn't stop because you apologized to your legs when you froze. And it's really nice to see somebody who struggled in the start, but then became so good at it that you ended up writing a book about it. And a lot of people do struggle with humor in speeches. Oh, by the way, to share with you, when I went on stage first time, like to do professional speech, I bombed in a very small group, so it was not that embarrassing, but still. And I couldn't speak for more than 40 seconds. Right? And then the next statement I said was, okay, I'm done talking. And that happened with me. And I was like, I'm never going to let this happen again. So there were two choices: either never speak at all
Right?
or change your approach and do it again and do it so often that you will improve. And I think we can see you as an example of that, right? Not everybody writes book about something. They have to be expert in what they do. And I've read the book. It's been very well structured. It does talk about the reservations that people have. Now, there's another question, not directly on the
Well,
humor,
and I
and I
think
wanted,
just a quick point
yeah.
on that is that I think that, I mean, two things is one, right? Like you got back up, right? Like anytime you're going to learn a new skill, whether it's humor or otherwise, you're not going to be perfect. But if you let that first failure prevent you from even trying, it's like you would never have learned to walk, right? We'd all be crawling around on the floor because the first time you stood up to try to walk as a toddler, you fell down. But you got back up and you kept going, or first time you ride a bike, or the first time you try a new sport, or the first time you know, do a new language or whatever it is. I think that humor sometimes, for whatever reason, we've just like, no one is like, oh, you're born learning how to walk and you're either able to or not. I get like, it's like, no, you're going to have to practice it. Just like learning humor, right?
Mm,
And like, sometimes people are just like, oh, well, I just can never do it. Well, the reason why people feel that, I think, is that sometimes that the awkwardness of doing it in public the first time, because humor requires an audience in many ways, even if the audience is yourself. But a lot of times it requires an external audience, so it feels harder. So people are less likely to want to do it. But I think the reason that I'm able to train other people on this skill is because I had to learn it. And that's one of the things that we talk about, is that everyone has a different style of humor. And so when we talk about humor as a skill, we're not talking about are you funny, we're talking about what kind of funny are you. Because my brother, as an example, is someone who is quote unquote more naturally funny. He is someone who will get people to laugh, and then afterwards I'll be like, what were you doing, why did you say that? And it's like, I don't know, I just thought it'd be fun. Like he's not intentional about it. It would be hard for him to write a book about the skill of humor because it's something that he's just like, I don't know, just do this. It's like why they say Michael Jordan never really became a coach, because he talked about, like, when he would try to coach other people, he'd be like, well, why don't you just dunk the ball from the free throw line?
mm.
And it's like, not everyone can do that. He's like, he didn't understand, like, okay, that's harder to understand the steps. Because I had to work so hard to get funnier, because it was really taking things apart, I can teach other people that, and I can hopefully shortcut the process so that you don't have to go through 15 plus years of stand up and improv and take classes in all these different places and bomb in a bunch of different, you know, spots and try to incorporate in a lot of different ways. You can take what I've learned and shortcut that process because I had to be strategic about it.
There's a very important thing that you've touched upon here, is why Michael Jordan doesn't coach, or why your brother just had humor in him. And I'm lately doing some research on this very area, to why some people have no answer to why they do certain things so well. And I'm trying to find the answer to that, because a lot of people asked me about something that I do. How do you do that? Which is doing a lot of things together
Yeah.
on in a professional level. And I looked at the answer and I realized that I will share something later after the interview, what I'm working on. But I feel that you have to build those identities. And there are a lot of people who just have it naturally. They don't know the answer, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you, yeah, but if you make it as a skill and learn it, then you're literally augmenting your original natural identities and adding one more. Um, and this subject area is very close to me. I'll put more content onto it. I've done a lot of research to how some people are so good in so many things, yeah, and doing well in everything that they're doing, and others are just growing in one area and maybe miserable in some part of their lives. But anyway, a little
Yeah.
bit of
And
stigma.
I think that's what I love about humor, because I think you're exactly right. There's things, certain things that I do in a natural way that other people don't. Like I was always good in math and engineering classes and things like my brother was not. He was more of the, you know, art class and social sciences, and always much better with people. I'm very much an introvert, and so that's always been harder. But like you said, there are things that you can learn. What I love about humor as a skill to learn is that it is a gateway into so many other skills. that if you learn how to effectively like learn some techniques from stand up, you get better as a public speaker. If you learn writing techniques from sketch, you get better at clarity of thinking and better as a writer. If you seek out laughter a little bit more, you relieve stress and show up more present for your family. If you practice yes and from improvisation, you have stronger relationships and you can create psychological safety with other people, and you tend to be a little bit more optimistic. Like there's all these gateways to it. And the best part of all of it is that humor is so much fun to learn. Like obviously there's technique and there's a little bit of work, but it's hard to find. You'd be hard pressed to like find a skill like dieting or exercise where you're like, yes, I love this all of the time. Whereas like humor, most of the time, it's like, oh, I just made someone laugh and now I feel good about myself. It's like it's very rewarding early on by doing it, and it unlocks all these other things.
I'm laughing because a joke came up just now in my mind, a brand new joke. uh, See, that's what happens when you talk to the people who are so good in something. You start to behave like them, and the
Yeah,
joke is
exactly.
that,
So, well, now we have to hear the joke. We have to hear version 0.1 of this joke that came to
yeah.
mind.
So the 0.1 version of the joke is this: I decided to learn comedy, so I started watching comedy shows, and I ended up becoming expert in binge watching. And I still didn't learn comedy.
Yeah, I got super good at clicking on things and finding stuff. Right, exactly. But that kernel starts that skill. This is why one of the things that we encourage anyone who wants to kind of improve their humor is to keep a humor notebook.
Mm.
Right? Almost any comedian that you know, big, small, etc., has some version of what they call like a comedy notebook, a place where whenever something funny comes to mind, they write it down. So you have this idea of a joke, you write it down, you maybe even share it in conversation, and then it becomes something that you can workshop a little bit later. If you're like, oh, I'm gonna, record a video, or I'm gonna do a talk, and I want to reference this thing, let me go back to my notebook and like, oh yeah, this observation about like I thought I'd become a better comedian, so I started watching videos and I just got good at picking videos. Like that can be a segue of like, that's like, same thing if you're trying to learn public speaking skills and all you do is watch TED Talks, you're like now good at,
Mm.
knowing how long 12 minutes is. Right. So you can have this like starting point. So one, it helps you remember stuff, the humor notebook. The more important thing that having a humor notebook does is that it starts to change the way that you see the things that happen to you. Because it's not that funny things happen to funny people, it's that funny people see the things that happen to them in a funny way. And so by increasing the time that you're writing down, your brain, because of selective attention and the reticular activating system, it starts to look for more of those things where it's like, oh, we're seeking out humor. Let me find, oh, this thing that happened to me in the bank is really funny, or this thing that I just watched is really interesting, or this thing that this person just said is really interesting. Like it just starts to build over time. And that's one of the easiest ways for people to get started. If you're like, I'm a little bit nervous, I'm too scared to like use it in front of my boss right away, which is probably a good instinct to have. Like you want to get better as a skill first. But if you're like, I'm a little bit nervous, start with the humor notebook to start to build your sense of humor and what you think is funny, and then you can grow from there.
Yeah. And I was just looking at, we are literally sweating because I'm in London here, which is very hot right now. And you're reflecting that energy, I guess. It's hot
Yeah.
where you are. So, just for the people who are watching, it's not a makeup. It's just that
Uh-huh.
it's really hot. It's global warming playing up. On your point of writing the jokes, whatever comes in your mind, what I do for, I don't know how funny I am, but I do write metaphors a lot. So anything that I'm seeing on the road, walking or doing something, or even watching some movie or animals, and if that can be connected with some real life experience, then just take it and write it down, and that makes you a very good metaphor journal, which is very
Mm-hmm.
powerful if people listening, if they are public speakers. Then if you have metaphors in your speeches, you are already in like top 1 or 2% speakers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because theory makes people sleep, and corporate people make each other sleep when they're talking. And that is what is your area of expertise. How
Yeah.
did
Well,
you?
and that I think that, and a lot of people think of it like, oh yeah, it makes them fall asleep, and so like it's not as good, etc. But I think this is what we do a lot with our the corporate work, and the part of the focus is, so my goal with Humor That Works, my company, and reason why I left P&G is twofold. It is, one, to definitely teach people the skill of humor, the people that are interested, but to also elevate the status of humor, to help more people understand and recognize that it's an incredibly valuable professional skill. Because
Hmm.
what you just touched upon is, I think, really important in the sense that people are like, yeah, it could be a little bit better. But if you are putting people to sleep, that can have a serious negative impact. Like we've been fortunate to do some work with the Red Cross, and talk a little bit about the story, the work that we did with the gentleman named Pablo Suarez there. And one of the things that he shared with us when we were like, okay, you're the Red Cross, you talk about serious topics. He's talking about disaster preparedness and how to manage climate change and all these like big serious topics. Like, why do you want to learn humor? And he said, if what you are communicating is important, then boredom has very serious consequences. And so that's why this isn't just a nice to have type thing. This is something where it's like, if you have the brilliant idea in a meeting, but it dies in the meeting because you didn't present it very well, or because everyone's eyes were glazed over and they weren't paying attention, that idea isn't going to last. It's not going to get you promoted. It's not going to get you new opportunities. And that good idea is not going to get implemented. And so this goes beyond just to like, well, people find you boring, to like, no, this has serious impacts on the results that you're going to get. And that's why we want to really push that's why we push both the research side of stuff of like why this is so valuable, so that people like get in their heads like, no, this is something that I should invest in. And then at the same time, here's how to actually do it.
So in the corporate environment, I have seen when you are cracking one or two jokes, it's okay. But sometimes your humor may make others, especially the senior people who are there for serious business, they only had 15 minutes. They came to listen to whatever talk is, and you try to introduce humor. Did you see any resistance in that? That's number one. And number two, if you could give us an example, sorry, an example of how did you introduce humor in a boring meeting? How does it look like from A to B, like a normal boring corporate meeting where a new joiner is just trying to keep his eyes open, maybe have a toothpick to like the Tom and Jerry, to keep your eyelids not to drop, and make it more engaging and fun.
Yeah. So first of all, yeah, it's absolutely true that using humor in the workplace doesn't mean using humor in the workplace all of the time. And, as an engineer, I wish I could give you a percentage. I wish I could say, like, if you use humor 11.7% of the time, that's like the sweet spot. Like 12% is too much, 11 is too low. But like no set percentage exists, although roughly 10% is probably decent, if you needed a number. But what we train is not humor for the sake of humor, but humor for a very specific goal,
Mm.
right? Like if you have 60 minutes of a presentation, it's probably worth and could be valuable to start with a 3-minute origin story that sets up the thesis for that entire presentation as to why that's important, right? That could be a valuable use of time. Then you might also sprinkle in humor in different places. If you have 7 minutes on the calendar of a CEO, you're not going to spend 3 minutes of that telling a story. Now, that doesn't mean don't use humor at all. It might mean use 1 or 2 quick examples, or it might use a funny image instead of an elaborate story. Or like you said, use a metaphor, right? If you know that CEO really loves golf, you might make a reference to like, hey, this project is a little bit like golf. If you think about it, like we've had these clubs and all that kind of stuff. Our role in this product isn't the golf club. That's the mistake that we keep on making. Our role in this product should be that we're the caddy. And it's something that takes maybe 30 seconds and you're like, oh, okay, like this is just a way to connect the dots a little bit. And so the biggest thing that we train on that is what we call the humor map. It's just being very clear on your medium, your audience, and your purpose. And so medium being, how are you executing the humor? Is it in this 7-minute presentation? Is it in a 60-minute presentation? Is it in an email? Is it in a conversation? Is it in a phone call? Is it in a text? Because that's going to impact the humor that you use, right? Because sarcasm can work in the workplace. Is a little bit dangerous, but it definitely is very hard for it to work in text. And so you might say, okay, let me avoid that completely. Your audience really matters, because the humor that you and I use on a podcast might be very different than what I would use if I'm talking to, the CEO of a company that's potentially interested in bringing me in, but very skeptical. And then finally, your purpose. And that is, what is the goal of that humor? Not so that people think, hey, I'm funny, but, oh, I want to use humor so that this person is paying attention. Or, oh, I'm going to use humor to relieve a little bit of stress on my team so that we reduce some tension. Or, oh, I'm going to use humor so that I build a better connection with a brand new client so they're more likely to hire me. Like, that purpose is going to change the type of humor that you use. And so I think that's the biggest thing. When it comes to answer your second question of like, what are some ways of like boring presentations? I think that, especially for slightly longer story or longer presentations, your origin story of like why you care, why you do what you do is very valuable, because it gives people a little bit of a background, and it allows you to segue into kind of a why, which is like, if you follow Simon Sinek, the whole kind of methodology of start with why. It allows you to do that, because that origin story could be about you, or if it could be about your company. I think another super easy way is through images. So if you're doing a presentation that involves slides, rather than just slides full of text, you have more images, more visuals, maybe even kind of an interesting, like, there's a picture of that I use in some of my presentations, and it's just a stick figure. Like it's a sign in a park of a dog, of a like stick figure walking a dog. But I include that picture because that particular one is the first stick figure that I've ever seen with a butt. Like, it's a stick figure, but there's like a round part behind it that like is probably the stick figure's other hand, but the way it's drawn, it looks like a butt. And so that's just a visual way to break up things. And I make that as kind of a little bit of a joke of like, hey, sometimes it's a little bit of surprise, and then boom, I give this little punchline. That's something that takes maybe 15, 20 seconds. It adds a little spike of intention, of attention, of paying attention, of like leaning in a little bit more, that then allows us to continue to move on. And I connect the dots, right, to make sure that people understand why I'm talking about this thing. But that's something that can happen very, very quickly. And so there's a lot of really small like, it doesn't have to be a big grandiose thing. There's a lot of really small things that you can do to add levity in quick ways that for the people that appreciate it, they'll appreciate it. And for everyone else, it's quick enough that you're moving past it, that they're not like, why is this person telling me this 18-minute long story?
So on that, let's jump onto your book a little bit. So you talk about 10 different strategies to introduce humor. Which are your top 3?
My top 3 strategies. Let's see. My top 3, I would say, is I'm trying to put. I'll just put them in not in exact order, but I'll give the 3 that I really enjoy. Probably the most impactful one in my entire life is practice yes and.
Practice
Yes and.
Okay.
That I think is. Are you familiar with the concept of yes and?
No, I'm not. Sorry, tell me.
Improvisation. Okay. So we're going to do a short kind of demonstration of this so the audience kind of understands it well. It comes from the world of improvisation. So what's going to happen is you and I, we're going to brainstorm a social activity. We're going to say we're getting together for some type of event. We're going to do some type of social activity, like, like how some people go to karaoke, or they have like, bingo night or whatever. We're going to brainstorm an activity. You're going to start, but for the first round, we're going to respond to everything with yes, but. So you'll share an idea, and then I'll say yes, but, and respond to it. And then you'll say yes, but to what I say and respond to it. We'll go back and forth just for like 30 seconds.
Okay. Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, go ahead. What's an idea for a social activity if we're at some event?
We can do a balloon lift. So 2 people will...
Like a hot air balloon?
No, just the normal balloon, which is on the floor. So you use only your legs, only your feet, to lift it up.
Okay.
2 people, 1 person from here, 1 person from here. Let's see the team building. Can you lift the balloon and take it up, as in like put it on the table?
Got it.
Or
okay.
higher table. I don't
know. Yes, but that sounds somewhat complicated to have to explain. Now you respond to me with yes, but.
Yes, but it teaches you how to do team building, how to work together.
Yes, but then we got to buy a bunch of balloons and things like that. There's probably other things that we could do.
Yes, but there is no other way I can think of right now.
Yes, but so we'll stop right there. Just very quick back and forth, right? So hold on to that, because now we're going to do the same thing. In fact, you can share the same idea if you want, or we can switch it up. You can switch it to something else if you want. We'll do the exact same thing, but instead of responding yes, but, we're going to respond yes, and. All right, so we're just changing but to and in this example. Okay? So go ahead and share. It can be the same idea, it can be something different, whatever you prefer.
Let's say another team building exercise or something, or just take the same one. Yeah. So instead of using the normal balloons, use the helium balloons and try to pull it down using your legs.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, and so for the people that don't know the exercise, we'll make sure that we have clear instructions so that they do it well. Now respond to me with yes, and.
Yes, and ask people to bring their own balloons.
Yes, and that can be part of the personality thing of what we see is that the balloon that they bring might, they might have a story related to it.
Yes, and that story might reveal something about that person.
Exactly. Yes, and after we do the balloon thing, we can have a bunch of like food and drinks so that people can casually chat about like the story of why they brought that balloon in.
Yes, and that will be a great game.
Exactly, right? So we'll stop right there. Which one did you find easier? Yes, and or yes, but?
But was more funny and made me think, because when I'm saying yes, but I'm thinking of something negative about it. But when I'm saying yes, and I have to add something more beneficial, so to say.
Absolutely. You're building on it a little bit more, right? Certainly. And so yes, but, so yes, and is the fundamental mindset of improvisation. Like if you take an improv class, you learn yes, and, because it's how people get into an improv scene and make things up off the top of their head, right? You get a suggestion from the audience, and then if you're both yes-anding each other, not necessarily in the literal term yes and, but if you're both building off of what each other says, you're going to get further in a scene. Because if I step out into a scene and I'm like, oh my goodness, there's a dog over there, and you're like, yes, but it's really just a rock, it's like we might get a quick laugh from the audience because they're like, oh, that's contrarian. But now you have two people in a scene arguing about something that doesn't exist. Right? And that's very different than if an improv scene, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's a dog over there. And you say, yes, and there's a monkey riding on it.
That was a good idea.
And now that may not be as funny as a punchline in that singular moment, but now we're building something together. And so yes, and is this mindset of improvisation, but it has a lot of different applications. And that's not to say that yes, but is bad, right? Yes, but that contrarian thinking, the finding what's wrong with the situation, is a power of observation, right? It is one of those things that's like, what's the deal with airline food? Like the Jerry Seinfeld kind of like cliche thing is it's kind of like, yes, we all eat this food, but why is it this way? That is valuable critical thinking. It's just that, especially in corporate, we tend to do more yes, but. And which one did you think was more positive? Yes, but or yes, and?
Yes, and.
Right? Yes, and is a little bit more positive because yes, but is critical thinking, and we need that. Yes, but is more efficient, right? Yes, but in many ways is a nice way to say no. Like in improvisation, we say yes, but is a no in a tuxedo, right? Yes, and is about building on an idea. And yes, and doesn't mean blindly agreeing with what the person said. It's not saying, oh, I agree with everything, but it's about picking one thing and building off of it. And so the reason why that to me is one of the most beneficial things to incorporate it, why it's one of my favorite kind of shortcuts that I talk about, is that it has a tremendous impact with two words. Because if you start yes-anding other people as a leader, you start to build psychological safety. They start to feel more authentic in what they say. If you say it yes and to a partner, you build better relationships. If you say yes and to a brand new client, they feel like you're on the same page. Because like, do you know someone who lights up a room whenever that person enters a room?
Yeah.
You know someone like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They tend to be like yes and type people, right?
Mm.
I have a good friend of mine like that. His nickname is Friday because like whenever he shows up, it feels like a Friday, right? Do you know anyone who lights up a room when that person leaves that room?
When the person leaves the room? Yes. Yes, 100%.
Yeah, right? They tend to be yes, but type people.
Oh, yeah,
They tend to
you're
be the
right.
people that are like, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Mm. This
Why?
is this is really good, and I agree with everything. Yes, but I was not ready to to play the jokes when you asked me questions, and I went on a very
Yeah.
serious kind of scenario. But
No, but that's the yeah, that yeah, this is the serious kind of part of the debrief
yeah,
of it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it is a
Uh, uh,
that's what I mean in terms of so that practicing yes and becomes a habit. And that's probably the biggest transformation that happened with me. It's one of the first things that I learned from improvisation. And it has applications both in terms of my relationships with other people
mm,
and myself. Because the challenge that some people are really good yes anding other people, but they yes but themselves, right? Like they might be like, okay, I listened to this great podcast. I hear about the benefits of humor. Okay, I'm going to sit down and try to use some on Monday. And then they do it and they're like, yes, but that's not very good. Or yes, but what if it's awkward? Or yes, but I'm really busy right now. So then they never actually implement it. And so part of it is like, how do you actually yes and yourself and your own ideas?
that's very inspirational. It's not just a humor technique, it is actually a way of life. If you change your attitude and behave like yes and end, that sounds really good. So that's one, right? So you have two more
Yep,
techniques.
that's one.
Hmm.
That's one. Another technique that I like is playing your work.
Playing
So
your
the
work.
idea of saying okay, something that you have to do, can you turn it into a game or make it more playful in some way? So for example, you think of anything that you have that's on your to-do list. So one of the examples I think I give in the book is even as simple as like reading email. Like it's like, okay, how do you make reading email a little bit more fun? Well, you could listen to music while doing it. You could try to add more fun in how you reply to people. You could do what I do, which is start to read emails in a different accent in your head.
Hmm.
So you'd be like, okay, what would it sound like if my brother who or my cousin who lives in the South sent this email to me? And then you read it with a Southern accent, at least in my case, a Southern US accent in your head. Or you're like, okay, what would it sound like if Darth Vader sent this? So just as I'm reading the text, it's Darth Vader's, breathy voice in my head. And so it's just small things like that to say, okay, here's a thing that I have to do. How do I make it 1%, 5%, 10%, just a little bit more fun?
Very, very interesting. And I think it also, I love accents. And I work in London, so you have people from everywhere in the world, and you will see somebody speaking in Italian accent. Obviously, everybody is speaking English, but somebody's in Italian, somebody's in French. Some of the work colleague in my, not in the current, but in my previous organization, they had such a thick French accent. Like, and I really loved because those are really good learning opportunities, right? So because
Exactly.
they
Yep.
say those English words exactly how the French person will say, and if you can catch it, you can actually use it to have fun when you're speaking. And if you're enacting somebody who's from France, for example, right,
Mhm.
or somebody from Italy, then you can enact it. So, and
Exactly.
it also helps creating some neural connections because you're learning.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I mean, obviously with like accents and things like that, you want to be, respectful and
Mm,
understand things like that. But that's a thing that's going on entirely in your head, right? It's not a thing that has to be outwardly facing with people in terms of like whether you're good at accents or not. I'm terrible at accents, but it can be a way to, um, just make it a little bit more playful, right? Any given, like, it's just, okay, what's one thing that I can do?
mm.
And this is what I love because it's all just experimentation. You can be like, okay, what's one thing that I can try right now? I'm getting ready to go into a meeting. What's one thing that I can try in this meeting to make it a little more fun? Okay, that works. Great. I'm going to do that again. Or, oh, that didn't work. That was a little bit awkward or weird. Okay, never do that one again, right? It's just kind of this learning process for you as an individual person.
And one more.
And one more, number 3 that I like, I would say probably from a very tactical one, engineer surprise. And so this one I think is in the communication chapter, and it's essentially, a lot of humor comes from incongruity. It comes from something just being a little bit different. And that's where, when it, like professional humor in particular, like if you're a keynote speaker, the bar is higher. If you're a comedian, the bar is the highest. But if you're an everyday person working in the workplace, the bar is incredibly low for what is quote unquote humorous, what is funny. Like you don't have to be Netflix comedy level funny for the workplace. And so just a little bit of incongruity, just getting people to lean in a little bit more is valuable. And so you can engineer surprise with like just having a little bit of like, oh, I'm going to do something a little bit different. For some people that might be like, my brother is a professor and he has just different socks where he has like different characters on his socks from different TV shows and things like that. And that's one small way where he engineers surprise. Some people have like stickers on the back of their laptop where it's just something a little bit different, a little bit personal to them. Even in our language. So one of the techniques, there's different comedic devices, right? Just like we have poetic devices like alliteration and consonants and all of that rhyme, we have comedic devices. And one of the easiest comedic devices to understand is, some people more broadly call it list humor. I talk about it as a comic triple, where a comic triple is simply a list of 3 things where the third thing is unexpected. Right? So for example, a more stand-up example, maybe is a little bit slightly aggressive, or a little slightly edgy, not so much. In stand-up, I used to say that, as I'm an engineer, and as a kid, I used to like to take things apart and put them back together again. Things like clocks and radios and my parents' marriage, which I never quite got together. But that's a comic triple where it's like, okay, clock and radio makes sense. And then now parents' marriage, you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Let me lean in. That's a little bit different, a little bit unexpected. A comic triple, you're basically engineering that surprise because you're creating a list of 2 things and people start to expect where the pattern is going, and then you break that pattern. And so essentially, anytime you have a list, you could say, could I make the last thing a little bit more interesting or something a little bit different? So for example, in my bio, when I talk about the clients that I work with, sometimes I say, hey, I've worked with groups like Microsoft, NASA, and the International Association of Canine Professionals. So people are like, wait, what is that? Canine professionals? Like, what is a canine? Is that a dog who has a job?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But it gets people to lean in
Yeah.
a little bit more. Another great example of engineering surprise is what we call a humonym, a humorous synonym. So you can say, okay, let me take something that I have to say, and can I say it in a slightly different or more interesting way? So like even something as simple as your email sign off, right? Most people write an email and then they say best, comma, their name, or they say thanks, their name, right? You can say, okay, can I change that sign off to something a little bit more interesting? So for example, I end almost all of my newsletters. I write a weekly newsletter about how to use humor a little bit more, etc. And I end each one of those with wit regards, WIT regards, right? Is it like, oh, okay, instead of with regards, wit regards. Or you could add, you could end it with like, that's all, folks. And then the next thing. Or when we train corporations and corporate groups to do this, we'll sometimes have them come up with custom ones for their own work. So like, we were recently working with some financial advisors, and one person decided, oh, I'm just going to, end my emails with best returns. So instead of best, it's best returns now, comma. And so it's just something a little bit different. It's incongruity. It doesn't have to be this huge joke, but it's engineering surprise and keeping people kind of paying attention on their toes a little bit.
That's interesting. The surprise, the triple, what did you call it? Triple?
Yeah, the comic triple.
Engineered triple, right?
Yep.
That works, and I've used it myself a lot of time on the stage. So now going to the stage from the corporate boardroom, how a speaker who's speaking to 10, 15 different people, what kind of techniques they can use to introduce humor, because there are a lot of people who don't come on stage only because they think that they're not funny. Yes.
Mhm.
And I always feel like I was never I don't consider myself that funny. I do have certain jokes every now and then. But when I look at some professional comedians, I just feel like, man, what is in their head? Like, I know there is a guy called Max Amini. I don't know if you know Max Amini. Have you heard him?
Not super familiar with their work.
Oh my
No.
God. This guy is a king of roasting people. He literally picks people from the crowd, and his shows are massive, huge, very big halls. And he'll pick up on somebody, he'll start talking to them. He goes into a kind of adult zone a bit, but even without that, he's very funny. He instantly find a joke about somebody, right? Even if when somebody he's asking name, what's your name? And if he's not able to hear the name correctly, he'll make a joke out of it, right? And I sometimes when I watch him, I was like, how does he get it? Right? He's literally so funny. So anyway, coming back to the question. So people who don't think that they are that funny, they are scared of introducing humor into their speeches. What do you think is the easiest way to become a funny speaker?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I think, well, one, to speak to the comedians that you see that are really funny online, part of that is like something about how they grew up. Maybe they learned it. Maybe that is kind of the research that you're talking about. Some people are just naturally like more instinctively good about those things. But that doesn't mean that you can't learn it. A big part of that is repetition, right? Because as you do more and more speeches, or as you do more and more comedy shows, if you ask a question, you often get a sense of, you know, what people are going to say. And you can do what we call planned spontaneity, where it's like you can pre-plan what you're going to say if certain scenarios happen. Like this, as a comedian, like someone, he knows that there's a good chance that sometimes he's going to ask for someone's name and he's not going to be able to hear it. So he can think about what he wants to say if that scenario happens. Or he does that live once, and then now he can repeat that in future speeches or in future comedy shows, because like, oh, that got a laugh, and now I can build off of it and I can grow. So there's certain things you can do like that. Crowd work in a lot of ways is just what you learn from joke writing. So if you get really good at joke writing and you sit down and you work on it and you do the hard work of like actually crafting it out and trying it and then putting it on stage and seeing what works and doesn't work, if you do that for years, that same process becomes more ingrained, and then that's what you're doing live in the moment, right? And so it becomes like repetition is incredibly important. Like we talk about these different tools that we use. The humor notebook is one. The humor map is another. Another really big one is just the humor stage, is finding repetitions to get better. And so if you're a speaker, that's why I still do stand-up. Like when I did my TEDx talk, which now has 16 million plus views and, you know, has led to events all around the world and all that kind of stuff, I did probably 30 or 40 stand-up shows leading up to that talk, just working on the stories. Like I didn't do the full comedic, I didn't do the full, like, here's the lessons for it. I still needed to add that, but I did comedy shows so that I could be like, okay, let me make sure I'm finding punchlines in this grandma story. And let me, when I do these math pickup lines, that I have the timing right. And when I use this joke a little bit here, let me understand the structure and how they play. So you want to get repetition, and ideally in a place where you can get feedback, right? A safe place you can practice it, where you're not going to be reprimanded based on kind of messing up, and you can get feedback on it. But the biggest thing that I would say in terms of if you're a speaker or even if you are a professional is to start with what you're good at. So where we have evolved since the last book that we wrote, Humor That Works, which is all about the introduction of humor as a professional skill, is we also now train on something called humor intelligence. And humor intelligence is recognizing that the skill of humor isn't one singular thing, but in fact, it's 8 different competencies that anyone can learn. And I alluded to it earlier where I said that, you know, if humor is a skill, then the question isn't, are you funny? It's what kind of funny are you? And almost everyone has something that they naturally do a little bit more than the other 8 competencies. And so if you start by leveraging what you already do naturally a little bit more of those 8, you can start to find success earlier, and then you can learn the other ones over time. And all 8 competencies can be applied as a speaker. They can be applied as a salesperson. They can be applied as an introverted, computer programmer at a company, right? They can all be applied in different ways, but starting with that strength is a good thing. Now, certainly you can, we have a free assessment on our site that people can take if they want to understand our framing of it. But rather, you can also think about, okay, what ways do I already naturally use humor? Even if it's for myself, even if it's never external, outward, but maybe I seek out comedy and I see it a lot. That can be a starting point to then be like, okay, well, the next time I watch something that's really funny, or the next time I see a meme that's really good, could I then use that meme in my presentation in some way? Could I use that to make a point a little bit later? And then you start to get into curation. Or if you're someone who naturally is like, I'm not funny, but I love going games, right? Like the balloon exercise that you talk about. Well, facilitation is one of the competencies. So you could say, okay, in my speech, maybe the balloon thing is going to take too much time, but could I facilitate some type of 2 or 3 minute exercise? Okay, well, let me research, brainstorm. Let me find an applied improv exercise. Oh, let me take the yes, but, yes, and exercise that we just did and do a 7-minute version of it in a talk. Right? It all starts with kind of like what you're more natural with. And over time, with more practice and repetition, more intention about it, you can get better.
Yeah. So your questionnaire, I'll put a link on the description if somebody wants to go through it on YouTube when we publish this video. I totally agree with you on repetition. There is a very small exercise which will 100% guaranteed make you laugh. And that exercise is just saying one single letter, well, not letter, word, but made of one letter, and repeat it every time you say it by one. It's like repeat it incrementally. And that one word is ha. Yeah. So if you do this ha, and then second time you say 2 ha's, third time you say 3 ha's, fourth time 4 ha's, 5 ha's, 6 ha's, like that. I've tried it with so many people. I've tried it myself. You cannot go beyond 7 or 8 ha's before you start laughing out loud, like LOL laugh. If you're really in a sad mood, don't want to laugh at all, you might go to 15 ha's. But you eventually will laugh. It works like ha, 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 ha. Right? So you eventually will laugh. So it's a kind of very simple example to teach people how does repetition change everything.
Yeah. Well, it's a great example, and it is a laughter yoga exercise, right? Like there's an entire practice called laughter yoga because we've recognized that there are incredible physiological benefits to laughing. Like ignoring the fact that using humor effectively can change how like people see an idea or can get people to lean in a little bit more. It can build better relationships. We know simply the act of laughing increases blood flow through the body. It relaxes muscle. It reduces, muscles. It reduces tension. It burns calories. It boosts the immune system, right? All these benefits. And the practice of laughter yoga comes from studies that have shown that whether that laughter is genuine or forced, we still get those physiological benefits. And a lot of times what you're saying is even a forced laugh oftentimes turns into real laughter.
Yeah.
Because it's so ridiculous or so absurd or something like that. And so that's a great example of a technique in terms of one, the value of repetition of saying it over and over again, but also just like, that's a thing where even if you never feel comfortable presenting your humor in front of other people when you're first getting started, even if you don't know where to find a funny meme to put into a presentation or to know how it's appropriate, you can still start with that internal thing of let me laugh more as a way to relieve stress. Okay, if I'm getting nervous before a presentation, maybe my technique is I'm going to say ha 7 times and laugh a little bit so that I'm not quite so anxious before I talk. Or if I always get, if I'm always exhausted after I give a presentation, because I'm an introvert, I love speaking. I love getting up in front of audiences and doing the networking stuff afterwards, etc. But I'm also very happy when I don't have to see anyone afterwards. And so it's like, okay, what are my techniques to recharge my batteries after I do the speaking event? And so I think that's a fantastic example of a simple technique you can use.
So there's one thing I find inspirational in your journey is you had a very good settled job in a reputed company, Procter and Gamble. Everybody in the world knows that company. And when you left that and you said to people that you're going to be a humor expert, when people knew that you are not that funny yourself, so they laughed at you. How did you manage them when they were laughing at your career move? And this is not just for the move that you made, but a lot of people in the world are scared to take that one step because they know that everybody's going to laugh. Yes. And you still did it, and you did it successfully. How did you manage that transition?
It's a great question because it wasn't necessarily easy at first. Like I wish I could tell you I have the sexy story of like, I was working at P&G and one day I got so fed up that I flipped over a table and stormed out and was like, forget this, I'm going to go and, build this business, and it was successful from day one. Not at all. Like, first of all, I very much enjoyed my work at P&G. I also grew up lower middle class in Cincinnati, Ohio. Neither of my parents have their college degree. And so getting a job at P&G, like my starting salary was higher than my mom's salary had ever been because she never had a college degree. And so the idea of getting a job at a place like that and then willingly leaving it was foreign to a lot of people. It was just something like, why would you do that?
Exactly.
How could you do that? This is a mistake, etc. Luckily, my parents were always supportive, but there's a lot of people that were very confused, especially not only just leaving it, but being like, I'm going to go and teach people humor.
Exactly.
And like you said, they're like, but you yourself aren't funny. Like how, like I'm not a naturally funny person.
So people will like, yeah, that's very funny.
Exactly. Like, haha, that's a great joke. But like, no, like what are you working on at P&G? And it's like, no, I don't work there anymore. And they're like, what? No. And I think that for me, it was very mission driven. Like it was very much this, like, I got pushed into using humor by my friend and it changed my life, right? It positively impacted my life in the sense that I became more confident in who I was, not just for public speaking. It 100% helped in terms of public speaking and improving my speaking skills at P&G and being in front of other people and even in networking scenarios and stuff like that. But it also just gave me more confidence as a person, where it's like once I could start making people laugh more intentionally, I was like, oh, I belong in this conversation. Right? Even like I've done speaking events where it's like I'm the speaker that's also with an astronaut, and here's a person who was in the Olympics, and this person climbed Mount Everest sometimes, and then there's like, hey, it's me, I like teach humor. But it's like I've been able to make them all laugh, and they've all, like, so many people have been scared. I even shared in my TEDx talk of like, I knew someone who, like, I met someone who like raises lions, and then they found out that I did stand up, and he's like, oh, I could never do that, that's too scary. It's like, but you live with lions, right? Like, it's like this perception thing. And so like, it was a thing that like impresses people, even despite no matter how good they've gotten, they're like, that seems like a slightly scary thing. And so it gave me confidence. It gave me a better perspective, like that yes and mindset of something happening to me. It gave me a chance to kind of adjust. And it got me better results, right? It got me like, once I started using humor intentionally at P&G, that's when I started to get promoted. That's when I got new opportunities. That's when I was rewarded internally with like different awards and given recognition and put into bigger and bigger meetings in front of bigger and bigger and more senior people. And so I only did all of that because of that nudge from my friend to do it. And so I became very passionate about being that nudge for other people, especially for the people that think, oh, but I'm not funny. Because like there's some people that are like, oh yeah, I've always been the funny person and this helps. I love that I can support them and help them be more intentional about it. But I really love the people that are sitting there and they're just like, I never realized that this was a skill. I never realized this was something that I could learn. I always thought I was just doomed to be the boring, serious person. And so I always thought I just needed more data. And I think that mission-driven thing is what got me past any of the naysayers, got me past any of the people that were like, oh, you can't do this. And I gave myself a year, right? Like I was very practical about it of like, I'm going to save up enough money that I can live for a year without making any money. And I'll eat ramen noodles and dollar pizza in New York City. But what can I do in a year? And luckily I had successes in those years because just like comedy, I think if I had failed, 1,000 times in a row, eventually it would have been like, okay, the definition of insanity is, doing the same thing over again and expecting different results. But maybe I failed 10 times and on the 11th one, I got a decent joke out of it, like decent laugh out of it. And then I fail 5 more times and then now it becomes a good joke. Like, because I had these small successes along the way, I had enough proof to say, I'm certainly not batting 1,000, but with practice and repetition, I can get better.
It's really interesting. And you don't do anything like your corporate job, you have completely left, right?
Yeah, I left 14 years ago. I work a lot with corporate. I have a lot of one-on-one clients who are in corporate environments that I help like coach with them. And I do a ton of most of my keynotes and programs are with corporations and training teams or associations. But for me, it's been me running Humor That Works for 14 plus years.
So your main identity right now as a humor coach, but at the same time, the experience that you gained in PNG and doing the corporate work is still somehow supporting your current ambition, isn't it right?
Yeah, I mean, well, I would say even before I'm a humor coach or keynote speaker, I would say I'm an engineer first. It's just that what I use in terms of solving problems, like when I was a computer science engineer, I use computer science to solve problems. I use programming, computers, etc. Now I'm an engineer, but I solve problems using humor. So I work with organizations or individual people to say, what's the challenge that you're working on? What are you trying to get through? What are the results that you want to achieve? And now instead of computer science, here's how humor is going to help you get there. Here's that technique. And so everything that I learned as a project manager and everything that I learned in computer science and everything that I learned being an engineer still applies. It's just the application is through humor. And it turns out it's a lot more fun. The other stuff is still valuable, but this is a tremendous amount of fun and it's still effective.
That's really great. And I mean, I can have one more hour with you, but just in the interest of time, I will ask you one question, which I ask almost every person I've interviewed on this channel. And I ask this impromptu so that I'll make you think a little bit. And the question is very simple. What, according to you, are the top 3 skills or behaviors that everybody should have, but schools don't teach?
Fantastic question. So I'm not going to go the easy route. I'm going to say broadly humor, right? The skill of humor broadly. But I'll give you 3 answers that are a little bit more specific that probably sit within the umbrella of humor. I would say that one skill is improvisation, is like the actual, like I wish all humans took some improv classes because improv teaches you human skills. And I think if all of us more ingrained had this yes and mindset as opposed to yes but all of the time, I think we'd be a lot more collaborative. We'd be able to build a lot more. We'd be a lot more positive, etc. And so I think improvisation is a fantastic skill that I wish more people learn. So that I think is number 1. I think curiosity would be number 2, is this desire just to be curious. Like I'm a huge fan of the show Ted Lasso. And like in it, he talks about there's a mindset of like, be curious, not judgmental. So curiosity, of course, applies to the idea of like, what is this thing? And let me learn about it. And like, oh, plants are interesting. I wonder how they grow, and be like having that level. But curiosity is also like, why did this person do that? Like, why is this person behaving that way? And if we can remove ourselves as opposed to like, okay, this person cut me off in traffic. Like, why? Well, you know what? Maybe they're in a rush. Maybe they have a sick dog in the back of their car and they're trying to get to the vet as quick as possible. Or, maybe they're raised by parents that weren't as good as mine and didn't teach them kind of like, that's not a thing you should do, or what? So it allows you to almost have a little bit of distance from this thing. So that overall curiosity, it also is a very valuable mindset to find humor. And then I think the third thing would be this mindset of like resilience in the application of failure being data, recognizing that failure is just data. And so that it's not commentary on who you are or your worth as a person, that whenever you're trying something new, it's not going to work. Or even if you're doing something that you're very good at and it didn't work, again, that's just a little bit of data to try to get better. And so that iterative mindset, I think, from engineering is what's really helped me. And so for people to learn that application of iteration, or that application of, we'll call it maybe resilience, I think would be very valuable for people, because they'd be more willing to take risk and more willing to try new things, like learning the skill of humor.
So that's improv and
improv, curiosity, and
failure is
resilience.
not a failure is a lesson, right? What was
failure is data.
The curiosity point, I think that should be a subject in universities more than it should be in the schools. Should be in the schools. I agree with everything that you have said. And it should be in universities, because when you grow up, when you come out of school, maybe primary school, you're very curious naturally. And after that, you see things, and then your curiosity just goes down. And by the time you're like 18, 19 and doing your job, oh God, it totally has completely vanished from from the way you ask, because we stop asking questions. So I think that's something should be there in the universities also. So thank you so much, Andrew. I really loved talking to you, and I will put all your links. And by the way, yes, I forgot to mention it, that your TED Talk is one of the reason that I found you, right? So you got like 16, 17 million views, which is, I think, in maybe top 50 or some TED Talks, which is a great feat on itself. Yeah. So very well done.
No, it's been very fun to see. And I think that's a small thing as well, of like, so 16 million views in the top 50 of all TEDx talks, so not necessarily TED Global. But what I think is really interesting about it is I encourage people to watch it, not because I want more views or because I think it's amazing, but watch it and then also read the comments. And you'll see, even with a talk with 16 million views, some people love it, and some of you listening will love it. Some of you may hate it, because especially in the comments, there's plenty of people that don't think that I'm funny at all. But that juxtaposition, recognize that's going to be true for anyone using humor. And so you don't want to rely just on like, am I going to always appeal to 100% of people? No. Instead, you want to think about the audience that you resonate or matter the most with. And one of those biggest members of that audience is yourself. And so using humor helps, because if you let the fear of other people, what they're going to say or think, prevent you from even trying humor, means that you're resigning yourself to be stuck and you're robbing yourself of joy.
Totally agree. And whatever is your skill, you will always have people like you, and you will always have people will hate you. That's one thing that I took some time when I started publishing videos, and it hasn't happened quite often, but there were some people who didn't like whatever I was producing, and they started writing comments. And it makes you feel like, shit, man, what did I do? Right? But the minute you're comfortable with it, then there is no stopping. So thank you so much, Andrew. Really, really enjoyed talking to you. And I'll put, one last thing. How do people connect with you, and what do you teach to people? What are your services? It would be nice to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So a big part of what we do is keynote programs and trainings for organizations and associations. And so that's probably the biggest way that we get brought in. We recognize that not everyone that wants to learn the skill of humor is going to do it through their organization. So we're building out more and more resources for individual people who want things. And so a big starting point of that is the humor intelligence assessment. You can find out more about our corporate stuff and also the assessment at humorthatworks.com. Completely free assessment to take. There is a report that you can get if you want to go deeper into it. There's other things that we're going to be launching soon, like an app and a community and all that. But the intent is we want anyone that says, okay, I want to learn this skill a little bit more, we want to give them free opportunity to learn what that is. And so there's a ton of resources on their website. As I mentioned, also write a weekly newsletter called The Funny Thing About That, which is just kind of my take on what's going on, and also skills and things to build, stories to and challenges to have each week to build your skill as you go along. And you can also connect with me on social media. People have questions or curiosities or things or disagreements or whatever, feel free to connect, and always happy to have those conversations. But the easiest starting point, I think, is humorthatworks.com.
Thank you, Andrew. I'll put all of those links in the description. So people, please do check out his TED Talk. Is actually funny, like especially his grandmother's jokes. I really found them funny when I saw them second time. First time I saw them like 2-3 years ago. And then I saw them again. I was like, oh, I remember this joke. Because that's what happens when you make people feel in a certain way, whether you made them laugh or whether you made them think or whether you make them create some sort of emotions, they will remember you much longer. And that's a key thing. And for a public speaker, if you can make people feel your message, it will be remembered for weeks, months. If you're just sharing data, they will forget it the minute they leave the room. So humor is a great thing to be introduced into your next speech. I'll have all the links here. Thank you so much, Andrew. I really, really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.